Welcome back to the Daily Dope. This is Brandon Strong, your friendly commentator. And, this is a quick update about some stories that I reported on in Michigan about a couple days ago. In fact, what we have is a couple of things going on here. First of all, we have the ongoing saga of the takeover in Michigan of the medical marijuana. I don't want to call it industry. That's their words. We'll call it the medical marijuana situation, which was a trust built up between communities, growers, patients. The growers were the caregivers, and dispensaries, where dispensaries were allowed, was also part of that trust that was built over the years of the Medical Marijuana Act in Michigan, which was passed in 2008. And during that time, what happened was that the caregivers were allowed to grow 12 plants per patient, and they were allowed to have 5 patients each. So you could have 6 total, which is a total of 72 plants. Pretty small grow operations by the standards of the new Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act that was passed last year, 8 years after the law was passed. So what happened recently was Laura, the Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Office of Michigan, who are pretty much kind of loosely in charge of how this new regulation is going to unfold. And basically the first thing they did is add some things to the law that the state passed by saying you could stack licenses and you can have more than one type of facility. There's 5 different types of facilities, and you can have more than one of them now under the same roof or on the same property or whatever you want to call it, with the same address, pretty much. So then, that was like not even a week ago. That was earlier this week when they said that, and then all of a sudden they said this. Now the 3 different kind of licenses for growing, I believe, is 500, 1,000, and 1,500. Today they put out a change to their thing that they said before about how you can be all on the same property. Now you can stack licenses for the Class C license, which is the 1,500 plants. So basically saying that you can get multiple licenses, Class C growing licenses. So, just do the math. You can do a 6,000 plant grow operation, 12,000 plant grow operation, maybe. Who knows? So anyway, stack licenses. Let's just go ahead and read this whole thing. It's not that big. The State of Michigan's Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, Laura, released an advisory bulletin today to inform and advise prospective medical marijuana licensees regarding stacking of medical marijuana Class C grower licenses. The bulletin is for advisory purposes only and subject to change. It is the intent of the Bureau of Medical Marijuana Regulation to allow a potential licensee to apply for and be granted multiple stacked Class C grow licenses in a single location. Each Class C license authorizes the grower to grow up to 1,500 marijuana plants. Stacked licenses must be issued to the same applicant licensee, and each license will be subject to an additional application and regulatory assessment. As in, so you want to grow 3,000 plants, that's 1,500, that's 4 Class C licenses, and if each one of those had, they set the license for growing probably higher for each class, like 500 and then 1,000 and then 1,500. So basically, I'm guessing it's probably going to look something like 2,000, 4,000, 8,000, or, something like that, 25, 5, and 10. So the Class C would be like already higher. So basically, now just for your license, you're gonna have to pay like. Did I say that was for the license? Maybe for the application, they all cost the same. But whatever. Even if it was, and the application was, I've seen applications where they said it was 5,000, and if you get turned down, you only get half of your money back. I think that was Lansing. But I mean, people can write shit like that if they want. And so basically, if you wanted to grow 3,000 plants, you'd have to pay a license fee for each one, and not just for the fee for the application, but for the actual license. I'm sorry. So why am I so stuck on that point? You might be wondering, you're like, man, get through that. Well, I guess it's because it's really becoming obvious that big money players are going to be are probably already looking to get these licenses stacked. And it's just a matter of, there's still probably some backroom talks going on about how many licenses are going to allow you to stack and all this other stuff. But it's a situation where you can grow tons of weed on the same property, process it, and then send it off to the lab to get it tested and whatever else, and then they come back, process it, sell it on site. So you can do everything except for test on one location. There's not much more to read into this. It's just, there's whatever there was before, they're applying it to every stack license. So stack licensee will need to identify and track all information in the statewide monitoring system under appropriate license. The licensee will not be required to operate each license in a separate, distinct working area. Licensee will, so basically, that right there says, okay, if you have like 100,000 square foot grow facility, you don't have to be like, okay, here's my Class C license, grow area number 1 and number 2. No, it doesn't matter. It's just like, okay, you have 4 of those licenses, you can grow 3,000 or 6,000 plants. Have at it. The whole warehouse can be, license 1 through 4 on your Class C grow license. You must be in compliance with all applicable local ordinances and zoning regulations. Well, right there you can see another avenue for the big people that want to take over to squeeze out the little people, is they could simply have certain areas only in the state where they're going to allow you to stack a certain amount of licenses for growing. Like they're not going to let you stack it up to 20,000 plants in, say, Royal Oak, Michigan or whatever. Or maybe they will. But basically, maybe the people that do want to run that part of the area for growing are going to set ordinances up everywhere around there, so you can only get so many stacked licenses for Class C. And all of a sudden, the one area where they want to have, or where it's like, oh, you can stack them up to 30,000 plants if you want. Next thing you know, those places are like, the only way you're going to get that license is if you were the lobbyist that quit your lobbying job and became a grower, And if you don't believe me there, I've already seen people researching the list of people on the little panel of people. It's like a little workshop for the growers to talk about, rules that are going to be promulgated later. And the people on these workshops, it turns out, are a lot of them are straight up lobbyists. So, wow. So yeah, that's basically they're saying. And as soon as they say it's all okay and they got the regulated weed and they can sell that, then, the dispensaries, who knows what kind of rules are going to be made for them later on down the line as far as how much stuff they can have on hand with this and that. But you can see other avenues later on where they might be setting that up in a way to where, depending on zoning ordinances and whatever, we only want to have a certain amount of dispensaries in this town. All of a sudden, the guy with the 6 Class C grower facility wants to have a dispensary in the front end. What's to stop him? And there you got another situation of bribery or and in Michigan, it's not necessarily just quid pro quo bribery style stuff going on. This is just the government is corrupt by design. The lobbyists are people that were in the government or in the industry that they lobby for, and it's a big revolving door, and they just go from one job to the other, it's almost like the first place you start is as an actual representative, because that's the lowest paying shit rung on the ladder. And then the next step there is the lobbyist. And then the next step there is to go into the, the industry that you were lobbying for. And then after you get there for a certain amount of time, then you become a senator or run for governor. I don't know. But yeah, this is the takeover. Straight up, guys. The takeover is in black and white, just like it always is. They just write rules, and it's going to push basically anybody that thought that they were going to get some kind of little medical marijuana grow facility thing. When they first seen this MMFLA come out, I got news for you, man. This isn't really what their plans are. Now, that's not to say that there's not a lot of really good actors when it comes to local governments and shit like that. So that's what you really have to hope for, is that your local government is working for the people. Because this is one of those issues where we're right down to whether or not, your local area is legit place to even consider this shit. Meanwhile, what about those dispensaries that are floating around? And they said, you guys got until December 15th, and then, maybe the police can come and shut you down. Well, then we hear about this. 3 Montmorency County medical marijuana dispensaries raided. Another Michigan drug team raided 3 medical marijuana dispensaries at the same time in Montmorency County. The Huron Undercover Narcotics Team, Hunt, searched 3 dispensaries in Atlanta, Michigan on Thursday. The drug team says that the 3 were operating illegally and that some were selling marijuana to anybody with a medical card, which we've seen is why Don Koschmider and others got their charges and subsequent, in some cases, prison sentences. So that's enough right there. But then they're making this claim here that they're actually even selling to even those without medical marijuana cards. So, oh boy, here we go again. 3 dispensaries at the same time. I've seen pictures and videos. It was state police was raiding them. They seized a slew of marijuana products. Of course, they're dispensaries. What do you expect to find? And along with money and a gun. Now, the gun might be a problem because, unfortunately, we have, and I've done reports about this, the NRA not batting for us, medical marijuana patients. And basically, several judges across the country have made rulings saying that medical marijuana card holders are not allowed to own firearms. So there's that. Drug team is not releasing the names or businesses until the prosecutor reviews charges. I'm going to keep up with that story. Thanks again, 9 and 10 News. Up north seems to be where the hotbed of raids are happening in Michigan. As we know, Cloud 45 and Gaylord, when it was raided, it's been raided twice now, and it's currently out of business. I mean, this is crazy what's going on in Michigan. So we know that right after they start approving licenses, that dispensaries are going to open. Who knows when they're going to actually have the regulated marijuana from, the medical marijuana regulations. Oh boy, but here we are. Medical marijuana dispensaries could stay open while applying for licenses under these bills. And now this is kind of an update of the story I did about the Ann Arbor rep who wrote this bill to try to save the dispensaries about a week ago, I think. So a group of Michigan lawmakers are pushing for existing medical marijuana dispensaries to be able to remain open while they are applying for licenses, contrary to guidance previously issued by the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. And right here you have the bill, House Bill number 5014, introduced by Reps Robbie and Zemke, LeGrand, Hamoun, Sabu, Elder, Robinson, Neely, Sowerby, Ellison, Peterson, Hudley, Gay, Dignago, Clemente, Howerly, Lack, Chang, Cochran, Riley, Phelps, Hartel, Wittenberg, Liberati, Brand, Green, and Jones, and referred to the Committee on Law and Justice. House Bill number 5014 If you live in Michigan, I urge you to find out who your representative is. I will put the link in the description below so you can figure that out. Contact that person and tell them to vote yes on this. Unfortunately, I've heard from a little birdie from Lansing that this is not going to see the light of day. That's what I heard from my little birdie in Lansing. Now, I hope that's not true, but as with the other medical marijuana law that's on the floor of the House right now, I believe it's 4604 or 4606, but it's basically an actual law that will add lines to the Medical Marijuana Facilities Act or Regular Medical Marijuana Act, one or the other. It don't matter because the Facilities Act kind of adopted the Medical Marijuana Act into its language, and then just it all became one thing. So anyway, what it does is basically protects people who are transporting their medical marijuana in their automobile. So there's no longer the side stipulation thing. Well, that's what it does. It crosses out this new thing that was added to the law earlier on, talking about how you had to have the medical marijuana outside of the cockpit and in some kind of a lockbox in the trunk kind of shit. Yeah, the thing is that, these things aren't going to see the light of day. This is Michigan. It's Lansing. It's really corrupt in Lansing. They're all Republicans in Lansing. The Democrats don't really, I don't know, half the time the Democrats are voting with the Republicans on some of the stuff that's just the absolute worst shit. But the Republicans got super majorities anyway, so they don't even got to hear any of this shit. And the people that pick what gets talked about and voted on, they don't give a shit about medical marijuana, right? And if they do, it's because their corrupt buddies want them to steer everybody they can out of it, and so that they can take it all over themselves. So under a law passed in 2016, the Department and Medical Marijuana Licensing Board are working together to license marijuana dispensaries, which are currently operating in a legal gray area. At first, the board considered asking all medical marijuana dispensaries to shut down in short order if they wanted to be considered for licenses. Yeah, he was like, shut down by next week or we're going to come and arrest you, take all your shit. That's how we'll shut you down. He's talking about, I don't know how many dispensaries are actually in Michigan. I'm just going to estimate that the number is between 500 and 1,000. And that's probably not. There's probably not even 500, but I don't know. Maybe there is. Who knows? There should be a lot more. But anyway, it would have been a monumental effort to shut down that many dispensaries in a place like Michigan. And it would have hurt the patients big time, and it would have hurt the caregivers and whoever had anything to do with these dispensaries. We're going to take a hit. So it would request existing dispensaries to cease operation by the 15th or possible impediment to getting a license. So that was the sticking point that the two people, we had Robinson and Bailey on the medical marijuana licensing board, who were raising all this fuss about existing dispensaries. Don Bailey is a former sergeant of the Michigan State Police. And I want to say the other guy was an assistant attorney general or something like that. Anyway, those two guys will still probably vote against your license when it comes across their desk if you remained open after the 15th of December. Or if you're even open after the 15th of September. If you're open today and you put a license in after you get it on the 15th, and it goes across and Bailey has a decision on it, and he has like this list next to him that says, here's all the dispensaries that stayed open, and yours is on it, he's not going to vote for you, but he's only one of 5 people that have this vote. And if Robinson wants to side with him, that's only 2 people. So we're still good there. So Senator David Nietzek, Democrat from Dearborn Heights, and Representative Yusuf Rabi from Ann Arbor, Democrat, are introducing legislation that would instead let dispensaries keep operating while their applications for licenses are pending before the board. Quote, we can't I don't know if that's enough, man. As soon as the licenses are granted or whatever, are they going to be able to still stay open? Because now they're selling stuff that's not regulated by the law. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see how they work that out. There's still time, people. We can't go back in time, quote. Here in Michigan, we have something very important, safe access. And while the legislation that was passed in 2016 changes the landscape, we can't let this intermediary period disrupt what we built here in the state, which is what I was talking about earlier, how you had the trust build up between the communities, the dispensaries, the growers, the patients, and all this shit. House Bill 5014 defines an already operating dispensary that applies for a license before February 18th, 2018 as a licensee. Until the board makes a decision on the dispensary's application, essentially giving the operation legal cover to continue operating while its application is pending. So we're talking about basically grandfathering in old dispensaries by saying, hey, and I've read it, it's right here. It's the way it's worded though, is it makes it sound like there was already some kind of an agreement with the dispensary and the state even, or maybe I'm just reading some of this section that they amended. Yeah, because this is section 201 of the MMFLA. And then this dark bold stuff is what they added to it. So right here they add an applicant who, on or before August 15, 2017, engaged in an activity that is licensable under this act, and who, on or before February 15, 2018, submits a complete application and pays both the non-refundable application fee required under Section 401 and the regulatory assessment established by the board for the first year of operation is, for the purposes of this section, until the board determines whether the applicant is qualified to receive a license under the Act, a licensee. So you're grandfathered in. As long as you get it, and then here's a new deadline. This is all hypothetical because, like I said, this probably won't see the light of day. But if it does, and if it gets passed, then February 15th is kind of a new deadline where you actually have to have an application put in. At that time, you're probably no longer going to be considered a licensee. And there's this other part for an applicant who, on or before February 15, 2018, submits a complete application and pays both non-refundable application fee recorded under Section 401-5 and the regulatory assessment established by the board for the first year of operation. The board shall determine whether the applicant is qualified to receive a license under this act or on or before August 15, 2018. And I think that's pretty much it. There's a section 401. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, NESAC plans to introduce a similar version in the Senate. Lawmakers say it's important to protect patients who join them at a press conference on Wednesday. Medical marijuana patient Justin Nichols is an Army veteran who uses medical marijuana for injuries he got in the Army. Quote, about 2 years ago, I found myself in a very dark place. I went to the VA and was given just a slew of prescription drugs, he said. Through talking with another veteran, he learned about the value of treating with cannabis instead. Today, he's healthy and running his own business. Carla Boyd, on the board of Epilepsy Foundation of Michigan. Her 15-year-old daughter has a form of epilepsy that wasn't being controlled by regular medications. I don't even know what that is, because some regular medications, even for a 15-year-old human being, those are not regular. They're just god-awful pills, man. All right. And she uses oil extracted by marijuana to control her seizures. Continued access to marijuana for epilepsy patients, she said, is important. Quote, it is critical to ensure practical transition for existing patients who rely on this therapy right now, Boyd said. NESAC and Rabbi said the bills have bipartisan support in both chambers. Rep. Tommy Brand, Republican from Wyoming, who supports the bills, said his brother has MS and is a medical marijuana patient. Brand owns a bar and said in regulatory areas like liquor control, places can open up with temporary permits until their permanent ones are in place. I mean, that's the most extreme example. But they do this for everybody and everywhere. Everywhere where there's licenses to be written and regulations to be followed, Republicans especially bend over backwards to let people slide until whenever it's convenient and whenever you get around to it, or we don't really care. Or if there's some situations where you're like, okay, I finally got my regulations in place and got my license to do this thing. It's like, 4 years went by, so you got to pay some back regulation fees or assessment fees or whatever. You got to pay some back fees, and then they get them waived. I mean, I've seen all of this shit happen in just you name it, any kind of business that needs a license. Come on, guys. This is like the Gestapo style shit. I don't understand it. I do understand it. There's a big force of corrupt money and power that's trying to take this shit over. And then there's people like Don Bailey who just they don't even want to see medical marijuana or marijuana legalized or any of that shit because they like the power that it brings them. And then there's, the patients. This is life and death. So they should have the same right, if not more rights, to stay open. It's life and death, and not only that, but whether you believe in medical marijuana or not, that's beside the point. This stuff is working. The people that go to the dispensary to buy medical marijuana have ailments, and it's doing it for them, or they wouldn't spend money for the shit. I don't know where we go from here, guys. I don't know if this is a good enough Band-Aid, and I don't think it's going to see the light of day personally. Maybe it will. That would be amazing. We've had so much bad news. It's getting pounded with bad news in Michigan, day after day, week after week. I pretty much stopped doing national news on medical marijuana or marijuana because it seems like everything's happening right here in Michigan. But I would be remiss to say that because it's happening in California. It's happening in Canada. Anybody paying attention to that? I think I'm going to do an in-depth report on what the fuck's going on in Canada. Same shit. In Canada, the government straight up, it's the government themselves taking over in many of the areas where marijuana is about to be legalized. The government's like, you know what? We'll just do a fucking monopoly on that shit. Who's going to stop us? And while the people aren't really trying to stop them, but if anybody pops up as any kind of competition or the activists say too much, then the cops come. And California, I did a report about a month ago. They're code violators for every industry you can name. Some of them being very dangerous to super deadly code violations. We've seen the one where the code violation in California where they had some methane leaking out of a pipe for fucking weeks on end, just polluting the environment like nobody's business. But somehow, when it comes to marijuana codes, which are basically written to kind of make it a little more expensive than it's worth for everybody that wants to do a home grow to actually grow. So they just make everything fucking crimes and have police with guns and handcuffs and shit come and bust up grows that they feel like are violating the codes. And we're not even talking about big numbers here. So this isn't just happening in Michigan. The takeover's happening everywhere. I did a report last year about how they're thinking about taking it over in Jamaica and whether or not and how they're going to, if they do, give the Rastafarians a piece of the pie. Man, what is up with these greedy fucking pigs, man? The pie is big enough for you guys to get a piece. We can all have a piece. People can fucking, have a decent economy, In the current situation that medical marijuana had evolved into in Michigan, it wasn't that bad, man. Anybody that was complaining was just either naysayers or haters. Were patients getting the raw end of the deal when it comes to dispensaries? It depends on who you ask. It depends on where you're at. You know, you might be talking about somewhere where there's hardly anybody that knows how to grow weed. And by the way, growing weed's not the easiest fucking thing in the world either. I'm so sick of people acting like the people that grow weed are just like, oh yeah, they're just, you know, they're getting paid too much, or they're having too much fun, they're buying too many toys, they're going on too many vacations, and all this stuff. It's just a bunch of noise. It's not easy to grow medical marijuana, guys. And if you have a dispensary that has a solid line of products that are worthy and contaminant, you know, basically contaminant free, and the potency levels are right, and, you know, it's not an easy thing to have accomplished. So, I don't know how you guys plan on pulling this shit off. Maybe you think your little workshops are going to be like your corrupt idiots that don't have any idea how to do any of this shit are going to sit there with fucking seasoned veteran growers and they're going to learn how to grow weed overnight. I'm telling you, man, I've been growing weed for fucking over 30 years. And all of a sudden, I met something called a russet mite. This shit ain't easy, guys. It's a fucking real hard job. If you think growing weed is some shit that you can just, like any old buddy can just fucking throw a seed in the ground and start banging fucking pounds of high quality bud, you gotta look into it, man. It's not even that. And when I was sitting here observing people becoming caregivers over the last 8 years, I seen time and time again, non-stop, people start growing weed, don't even buy a book, ain't even trying to learn anything about actual horticulture, ain't even trying to learn anything. Just, I want to grow weed, they start growing based on what they've seen people do or heard of. Don't even know about light cycles. Don't even know about fucking anything. But hey, you know, we've been here for a while, and we've evolved this program into something. And what it ain't is it isn't like ready for some kind of a big corporate monopoly to come and take it over. There's a lot of people that are heavily dedicated to what they do. And they don't care whether they make money or not. I don't care if I make money or not. I barely survive over here. You know, I do this for the patients. I do this for the program that could be something if it was interpreted properly as being a protection order rather than a guideline for arrests. And one final word before I end this is I see a lot in the comment sections of these stories in Michigan. Not necessarily my videos, because everybody knows where I stand, but basically we're on the verge of getting maybe one of the ballot initiatives finished in Michigan, and that would be the My Legalize. Now, my audience isn't that big. I did some clips about My Legalize, and I did some clips about abrogate prohibition, and, you know, 100 views isn't really shit, man. I really feel like when I talk to Tim Locke from Abrogate Prohibition, he's a real stand-up guy and a really sincere person, and he really knows what he's talking about, you know. And if you listen to that video, you'll see that that's really the way to go. You know, My Legalize, I'm gonna go through it. I know I keep saying I'm gonna, but I don't want to put a video out that makes it look like I'm shitting on My Legalize, because that's not who I am. All right. I support everything that would advance us anywhere besides where we're at right now. Is My Legalize another trap like the MMA? Well, the MMFLA is definitely a trap. We just seen the trap snap, and boom, we're all caught in it. And, you know, like this bullshit about how we got to fight to keep dispensaries from going to prison right now. Oh man, that's not what the intention of the people was that passed the law in the first place. So, kind of going all over the place, but I wanted to mention that, yeah, the support is here for both legalization platforms. People that are in Michigan that watch this channel probably all have signed both. I don't understand, you know, why we don't have that much outreach besides this. from what I see, or where I see, like, to me, I think abrogate or prohibition Michigan should be easily disseminated to the people that are in the medical marijuana registry. That would be enough people almost right off the bat to get this thing done. And I'm sure that that's just the feeling of everybody that has a that wants to see that succeed. And that's, I don't know why I keep going over this, but when it comes down to it, even My Legalize, and I asked in the interview with Colin on My Legalize about that, about the regulating marijuana like alcohol. What's that going to do for the people that are sitting in prison right now with charges? That would be like, hey, that wouldn't have been a crime had you been caught now instead of when you got caught, which could have been any time between now and when the thing goes into law. So someone could have got busted the day before we found out it passed. They could have voted for it and then got busted when they went home. Next thing you know, they're getting a prison sentence, but My Legalize can't do nothing for them, or regulate like alcohol can't do anything for them. Whereas abrogate prohibition basically says this is retroactive, so everybody that has a charge or is sitting in prison or whatever can revisit that shit. And that's, I'm not saying one's better than the other. They're both better than what we got now. Abrogate is better than My Legalize, if you want to know my opinion. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people feel that way, even people involved in the other campaign to regulate like alcohol. And I didn't, in my opinion, ever say that the spirit of My Legalize has been totally removed from the new petition language, but I kind of do feel that way a little bit. It is more of a campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol, no doubt. So we got to get there, man. That's all the things I can say about this. Takeover is upon us. The corrupt players are already in place, and they're just waiting for the time to run out.